Dr. Rose, can you give me, if you were king for a day, the three things you would do?
We'll start on something that you might find more attractive. I'd invest.
I'm not interested in attractive.
Right. No, I'd invest.
But I've been to so many of these hearings
Right.
where people come and talk about catastrophe, and you say, okay, what do we do about it? And you get nothing but nonsense.
Right.
So if you could give me, this is your chance, just three specific things, King, that you would do.
So I would invest in carbon capture and storage. I don't think we need to get rid of all fossil fuels immediately.
That's one. Number two.
Number two, I would pass a renewable portfolio standard for the U.S., which calls for a shift to renewables and electricity generation. So I recently completed a study where the...
Don't have time.
All right.
What's number three?
I would pass a cap and trade bill in the U.S. to find the least cost ways of dealing with climate change.
Tell me how that would work.
You essentially place a cap on emissions, you give permits or allowances to entities, and you allow them to trade. That trading shifts the cost burden to the lowest cost entities. We found that that can save 70% of the potential costs of dealing with climate change as opposed to passing across the board.
You put a tax on carbon?
Well, it's different than a tax because you can freely grant these allowances and then it's trading. So it's not a tax. It's different than a tax.
All right. How much do you think all this will cost? Your best guess.
I don't have a dollar figure, but the figure is a lot lower than what I've heard on this side of the aisle today.
Well, you think we ought to just do it and then worry about the cost?
No, I think we should do studies.
What's your, I mean, you advise the UN and you're at USC, and that's a pretty good school.
Right.
What's your best guess about what it'll cost us to decarbonize by 2050?
Well, one thing I'd like to mention to the gentleman, Brown, that it's not the government paying this cost.
Yes, but could you give me a figure first?
I would say it might cost us 2% of GDP per year. So that's in terms of the U.S. to start, and that's a couple of $100 billion.
Couple of $100 billion
to start, and then it'll level off.
Is that every
and
year?
Eventually, I think we'll save money.
I don't know why I can't get straight answers, okay?
Right.
Y'all want to talk about the problem, but you never want to answer the question.
No, I've been answering it.
Well, no, you haven't. I'm just asking for a figure. Does anybody have a figure that it would cost to decarbonize by 2050? That's all I'm asking. Does anybody have one?
So my answer is you start out with $200 billion and you get down to a cost savings by 2040.
What would be the total cost by 2050, you think?
At most, a couple of $100 billion by 2050 over 25 years.
So you think we can totally decarbonize America by a couple of $100 billion?
Well, I didn't say totally decarbonize because remember I said carbon capture
neutral.
and start.
You're right, carbon neutral.
Right.
Does anybody